Have you ever wished you could eavesdrop on a conversation with a millionaire? My name is Michelle Thompson. I'm a retired project controls engineer and business professor, and that's exactly what I'm going to do in this podcast. I get to ask the questions that everyone else wishes they could. I'm going to find out exactly how they were able to build their empires through automation and outsourcing. And I'm going to break it down in a way that helps you build your business to run on autopilot. Don't miss out on Automate to Dominate.
From author Donnie Bovine comes the book, How to Be a Success Champion, available on Amazon. After years of living other people's dreams, author Donnie Bovine decided to jump out on his own and start a business, thinking it would be easy. Instead, he had a rude awakening and quickly understood that he had spent 20 years being an employee and had no idea how to be a business owner. His business was tanking, and he was on the brink of losing everything when he decided to fight for business freedom. In this must-read and life-changing book, author Donnie Bovine shares with readers his story intermingled with lessons learned from his mistakes and his failures. In How to Be a Success Champion, you will find advice the author received from mentors and how he went from zero to a six-figure business. The author walks you through the steps of how to get out of your own way, how to play the game of business and win, find your strengths, how to network effectively, how to build a personal brand, how to create champions for your business, how to get great at sales, how to take complete ownership of you and your business. How to Be a Success Champion from author Donnie Bovine, available on Amazon in both Kindle and paperback editions. Order your copy right now. It makes a great book for corporate events too. How to Be a Success Champion from author Donnie Bovine, available on Amazon.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Automate to Dominate. Today, we have Laura from Meet Edgar, and she is the founder and creator of Edgar, who you guys are going to learn about in just a little bit. But before that, you had a life in social media marketing world, right? Which is how Meet Edgar came to be. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So I've been in the social media space for as long as there has been a social media space. So when I first started working for myself in 2007, I was a freelance web designer. So I would make websites for my clients, and Twitter had just launched, Facebook fan pages would launch soon after, and my clients would ask me what these things were and how they worked and how to use, should they be on them? What should a business be doing? So I would just help my clients with that. And then people would tell me, I would pay you just to advise me about social media. And I thought, that sounds like the easiest job in the world. I definitely want to do that, get paid to tell someone how Twitter works. So yeah, that's how I first got into it, and had courses about all the different tools and social media marketing. And then Meet Edgar was launched in 2014, and it was really a direct output of the courses. Basically, we created software to do automatically what we were teaching people to do manually in the courses.
Awesome. So how did you even go about marketing Meet Edgar, right? Because it was this new concept. I mean, there was like Hootsuite, but not really Meet Edgar, what you created. So you were frustrated, so you built your own. So can you tell us about that?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we were and still are innovative in our space. And the biggest innovation when we launched, which is still a difference between most of our competitors, is keeping an organized library of your content. So with a lot of social media tools, you just put in the update and then they send it out, and then that's it. And I felt very frustrated by that. I really worked hard to curate this library of great updates, right? Because when we're talking about Meet Edgar, we're talking about not posting just for fun. We're talking about doing social media marketing for a business. So sometimes you're just sort of sending out whatever, but often it is something more thoughtful, really thinking about your marketing. So you put all this time promoting your latest launch or promoting your latest blog post. And I'm like, well, I don't want all those status updates to just disappear. I want to be able to repurpose them. And that's what we did and what we still do. So as far as marketing, there's kind of an easy part and the hard part. The easy part was that I already had a social media marketing business. So at this point, I had already been teaching courses about social media marketing for, I guess, about 5 years. At that point, I had already built up a pretty substantial list. So that part made the job, of course, much easier. Although not as easy as people think. When I look back at our growth numbers, we grew quite quickly for a bootstrapped company. But if you look month by month, it was gradual. It's like 25 people, then 50, then 100, then 200, then 500. So it sort of proves that if it was just in that list, it should have been much more right from day one, right? People sort of have an idea, if you have this big list, because we had 50 to 75,000 on our list when we launched. It was a big list. So if everyone was just ready to sign up immediately, we should have got 3,000 customers, right from that first message. And that's definitely not what happened. But obviously we leveraged that list and that audience, and that certainly, of course, made it, much more successful, much more quickly than had we had to start from scratch. So I said there's an easy part and a hard part. So that was the easy part. I mean, the hard part, and this is something we still struggle with today, is kind of exactly what you said, communicating how we are similar and different from other tools without sort of confusing and overwhelming people, because it is a different workflow and a different paradigm, which is what is so amazing about our tool. Basically, we give you a much more effective way to do your social media marketing. But if you're coming from a different workflow, it can just seem like, wait, why is there so much more to do? I thought I just sort of sent out the tweet and that was done. And we're like opening up this whole new world of possibility for you, but it can be a little overwhelming if that's not what you're used to.
Yeah. And to be honest, when I first started, it was hugely overwhelming. I was like, oh my gosh, there's all these buckets. And what do I do with an RSS feed? And why am I curating content and like all this, crazy stuff? So, because I wasn't used to it, I was used to, I didn't have, a really good, solid media marketing plan, which I should have. And that would have made it a lot easier. And so I think that's one of the things that people struggle with is they don't realize, as a marketing tool, not just I'm posting what I had for dinner on Facebook, right? The strategy behind it. So how do you help people learn that strategy who are small business owners and just, they never had a degree in marketing, so they just don't know?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think social media can be especially confusing because we also all use it just for fun, personal use at the same time, right? If you're buying a billboard, you're not confused like what it's for and what you're going to do with it. You've never bought a billboard before. Now you're like, okay, what marketing message am I going to put on this billboard? Whereas, social media marketing can be very much a gray area, especially for those of us who have personal brands, who are thought leaders, that kind of thing. It's like, okay, is this my personal account or my business account? And how personal do I get? And we all have to figure out kind of the right mix for us. But, we help small business owners figure this out in a few ways. One, we have our course, Social Brilliant, which actually used to be just for our customers, but we recently opened up for free to everyone. So if you Google Social Brilliant, or I'm sure we can, have a link here, you'll find that. So that's a great place for anyone to start. It really gives you an overview of how to have an effective organic social media marketing strategy. Another thing, there are lots of little things we do in the app. Like you mentioned the buckets, right? So those are our categories. And something that's different about Edgar is that you can, if you want to, and we would advise that you do, think about all the content that you're posting in the context of what category does it belong in? And we give you some defaults to make it really easy. Like, is this straight up promotional content? Is this inspirational content? Is this, linking to my blog post, which is a really common thing to do. So just the fact that we have categories and then especially giving you those defaults, it kind of helps give people a framework and start thinking about, what are the different types of content that I post on social? Because a lot of people, have never really thought about that before. They're just like, I just post. I don't know. I think of something and then I post and then I forget for a week and then I post again. So really thinking about what do I want to communicate about my business and about my brand via social media? What are the different types of messages and content that I want to put out there?
And I think that's the brilliant thing about Meet Edgar, right? Is because you can, as a business owner, sit down, carve out 4 hours and blow through everything, set it up, and then it just runs on autopilot. We don't have to think about it until next month. Or if you're really good, you put your whole quarter in there, right? And you do it 4 times a year, or you get even better and you get your VA to do it. But I think that's the power is, you're able to constantly be touching your audience in a very meaningful way, but yet it's all automated and you don't have to think about it. It's set it and forget it.
Right. And that's something, that we talk about a lot is the important part is really focusing on your content, not how it's sent out. Because a lot of entrepreneurs get sort of freaked out about this idea like, oh, it's just going to post for me and I'm not going to have control over it. Well, I mean, one, you can have as much control as you want. But two, your audience doesn't know or care if the Facebook update was literally sent by you or a VA or Edgar or another tool, or if you used your phone or your laptop. Like, none of that matters. What matters is the content of the post. And the cool thing about Edgar, or, honestly, if you were just so organized and had so much time, you could just plan this all ahead, do this without Edgar. We just, cut out a lot of the steps and make it a lot easier. But it gives you the time and space to really think about the important part, which is what you're posting, not how you're posting. We love batching, like you just mentioned. And if you sit down and you're like, okay, I don't want to just randomly find an old blog entry. I really want to think about what can I say to get people interested in clicking this blog post? Can I pull one of the most interesting paragraphs from this blog post? Or is there like a little image that's an infographic that's in there that I want to make sure is linked on social media? When you actually take that time, you're ensuring that you're giving the best content to your audience, and then you can feel good about sending it on autopilot or repeating it or all that more automated stuff because you're like, okay, I actually sat down and made sure this was the content I wanted to represent my business.
So give us and I know you have videos, so absolutely go check out the courses. They're amazing. And I honestly can't believe you guys give them away for free. That's crazy. But in there, you give some guidelines as far as, we should have X%, promotional, X% inspirational, X%, family, X% educational. Give us some guidelines for somebody who maybe is not familiar with this concept at all. And I was actually explaining this to a client yesterday. And I was telling her about, how we were going to set up our buckets. And she's like, well, do I have a bucket for everything I want to be known for? And I'm like, okay, wait, no, that's not quite how the buckets work. You want your audience to know, like, and trust you. So it's a little bit of a different concept. Can you clear that up for people?
Yeah. So, first of all, I have no idea what percentages we recommend in the video. So I'm sure I'll say something different because, of course.
Sorry, I can tell you.
Do you want to say what it says in the video?
Yeah. So Megan basically says, you want 33% inspirational. And if I'm getting them wrong, sorry, Megan, but it's like 33% inspirational. You want, 20% family stuff where people get to know, like, and trust you. You really only want 15% promotional and sales because you want to provide a whole lot more value than here, buy my stuff type of a thing. And so that's kind of the concept. And I know that didn't add up to 100% because there's a few things that I'm missing. So go watch the training.
Yeah. And of course, everyone, we give numbers of, just to be clear, not because there's some magic formula that when you hit those exact numbers, then everyone starts liking your post, but because we know that people do find it so valuable to have just a template to start with. So yeah, exactly. Even though it didn't add up to 100%, it doesn't really matter. It just gives people an idea of the kind of mix that you can start with on social. And then you can see how your audience responds. You can see if that is feeling right for you and your business.
Awesome. So explain to us RSS feeds, because I cannot tell you how many times I explain what an RSS feed is and how do we leverage the power of RSS in Meet Edgar.
Yeah, so RSS feeds are so cool and definitely underappreciated because they have this terrible name that makes them sound really techy and confusing. So an RSS feed is just a feed of a blog's post. You actually also, they go beyond that, your YouTube videos have an RSS feed, different social channels have RSS feeds. But the easiest way to think about it is just when you update your own blog, or when someone updates their blog, there's this automated feed that shows every new blog post. Now, what's really cool about that is that means that a tool like Meet Edgar has a way to automatically find what's new in your world and automatically tell people about it. So it doesn't mean that you are never going to do some more, maybe like, going in and creating your own social updates about your posts, but it gives you a really amazing baseline to start with. I always tell people, if all you did was have Meet Edgar, grab your blog's RSS feed, and then, we can automatically just send out the headline of the post and the URL, right? It's not a fancy status update. But honestly, if businesses just did that, if all they did was like, I'm going to grab the RSS feed, I'm going to send it out on social media, I'm going to send like one post a day and just go through my blog, I promise you would increase your traffic from social media just doing that. It's just like this really simple, no-brainer way to make sure that people are always seeing your content.
Yeah. And I don't know, some people would call it cheating, but I actually went out and so for my educational content piece, I wanted to make sure I was providing like a ton of value. So I went out and found other people who do exactly what I do, very similar. Mm-hmm. So like I do a lot of outsourcing. And so John Jonas owns onlinejobs.ph. And so he has a great blog that's full of a lot of really good content. And so what I do is I have his RSS feed come in too, but then I have, I go through and I check, okay, is this something, is this an article that really pertains to my audience? So it's not like it's just blasting all of John's stuff out there, right? So I get control over it. And so I'm able to leverage those of us who are really good at educational, because I have a blog too, and I put out a lot of really good stuff. But, at a certain point, I'm sure people get tired of listening to me. So I want to provide them a different point of view and different value. So that was a way that I've been able to really leverage the RSS feeds too. And when I tell people about this, it's like this light bulb goes off. They're like, oh my gosh, like I never thought about doing that. And why would I put my competitor on there? But they're not like an exact competitor, right? They work in line with you, because there's, like Hubstaff is another one that I use to track hours and things. And they have a great article on how to run a remote team, right? Yeah. So why am I going to go rewrite that? I'm just going to give them, Hubstaff's article. And these are all tools that I use. And so I think when you start thinking outside the box just a little bit, you start to really harness the power, which is awesome.
Yes. That's such a great tip. And yeah, just to clarify for listeners, in Edgar, you can choose whether you want the RSS feed to just automatically go out, to your social networks without your approval, which maybe you would want to do just to simplify for your own blog. But yeah, you can also just tell Meet Edgar to collect them, and then you go through and approve. Because yeah, sometimes there's like, they have a post just saying, announcing their next sale or whatever, and maybe you wouldn't want to send that out. But yeah, it just gives you this incredible bucket of content. You can just say, okay, here's 3 great blogs in my industry. I'm going to pull in the RSS feeds, and then you just click, and have a ton of great content to share with your audience. I love that tip.
Yeah. And I think, people ask me all the time, how in the world do you have the time to do this? I don't. I automate.
You're like, Edgar does, not me.
Right. Exactly. And that's like my biggest thing is I love getting software and systems to do work for me. So you become omnipresent and you deliver a ton of value, but it's just setting things up smarter and working smarter, not harder. And that's exactly what Meet Edgar does. So
automate to dominate says it all.
See, automate to dominate. That's it. Okay, so if I can I pivot just a little bit?
Yes.
So you have done what most of us are trying to do, which is you have, launched the giant and succeeded. So how did you grow your business? What were some of the really tough obstacles that you had to get through? And how did you make those decisions and figure out how you were going to do it? My back's against the wall and this is either going to happen or we're going to go down swinging.
Yeah, I mean, we've had so many hard times. It's been, we're about to have our 6-year anniversary. Yeah, so we've been around for 6 years, which is kind of a long time if you're a social media marketing, software.
You guys are ancient.
Yeah, we're really old. So probably the biggest struggle that we've had is when Twitter made a big change in their permissions. So the big upside and downside of our business model is that we're, of course, completely reliant on the social networks. They don't have to give us permission to work with them. They can just cut off our access at any time they want. And actually, this is a trend that all the social networks are moving towards. They used to just have open APIs, which just means, that anyone can build a tool that works with them. Now they're all moving towards permission only, partner only. Any of our customers know how much they've been wanting Pinterest, and we've been working with Pinterest for over a year now, making our way towards their partner program. We actually have been approved now, which is really exciting. So hopefully that will keep going well and we'll get Pinterest launched soon. But people don't realize that, people are just like, why wouldn't they build Pinterest? Like, well, it's not that simple. Unfortunately, it used to be that simple. So in 2018, Twitter announced this new rule that said you are not allowed to repeat the exact same tweet ever. And you're also not allowed to send the exact same tweet on more than one account. So the reason they did this, I totally understand. They're trying to block spam. They don't want accounts sending out the same spammy message 1,000 times over and over again. Totally get that. If Twitter was like that, no one would use Twitter anymore. The problem is the way they decided to introduce this was so broad that literally, according to their terms, you can't write good morning twice over 10 years. That's against their terms. Now, that doesn't mean that your account is going to be automatically shut down. They're not actually, making sure that this happens, but that's what their terms say. Their terms say you cannot repeat content. Now, as we've discussed, a big selling point of Meet Edgar has historically been cycling through the same content. So when this happened, we're like, ooh, this is not so good. This is not what we'd want. Again, totally understand the intent, but wish they had implemented it with a little more nuance, right? Like you can't repeat the same thing in the same hour, even the same week would have been fine, right? But they're like, no, you can never repeat the same thing. So, it was hard for us in a lot of ways. We actually lost a lot more business than we thought we would. Like a certain amount of our customers were like, you know what, we just use you guys for Twitter and we just wanted that one functionality. A lot of people actually told us they weren't going to use a tool at all. They're like, we're just going to post manually because this was the reason that we used a tool. Because when we first saw this coming, we're like, well, it won't be that bad because all the tools are going to be in the same boat, right? Like we can't repeat, but other tools can't either. So people have nowhere to go. Turned out we were wrong about that. People are like, I have somewhere to go. I'm just going to stop using a tool, or even I'm going to stop marketing on Twitter is what some people did. So we lost.
I was one of those people.
Were you?
Yeah. I was just like, forget about Twitter.
Bye Twitter.
Yeah. So, but anyway, sorry.
No, that's interesting. That's interesting to me because some people found that Twitter they're like, you know what? I'm getting my traffic from Facebook anyway. Like I'm not getting a lot of traffic from Twitter. Yeah. So some people were like, we just don't have a use case for your tool anymore. We lost a significant amount of revenue. We ended up having to do some layoffs, which I just never anticipated at all because we had been on such a huge growth trajectory before that. But, the good was it forced us to innovate more in our product. Like we now have suggested content where we automatically pull some snippets from your blog post and you can use that as your status update. Like that came directly from this Twitter thing. So we're like, all right, we have to find an innovative way to help people come up with quality content that's distinct, right? So they can easily pull a few status updates. So that was the good. And of course, the lesson was just like, you can't rely on any of this. You can't rely on permissions from any of the networks, whatever. Also, it's very specific what they let you access. Like a lot of people ask us why we don't have more detailed stats and, analytics stuff. It's because actually the networks we give you what they give us. They just don't give us very much. And maybe they'll give us less in the future. So that was definitely a very, very hard time that we've gone through.
So I know that a lot of us have noticed over like the last 3 or 4 months that Facebook has just been way more restrictive and they're censoring a lot and we're actually having a lot of problems. In fact, this is hilarious to me. So my actual website, Facebook flagged as spam and I have sent them like 10 emails. Like, I am a legitimate business. So literally nowhere on Facebook. So none of my RSS feeds for my blogs are working anymore, right?
Oh
Because
God.
every time it's like, you cannot, this goes against our content.
Oh,
You are
wow.
spamming people. I'm like, no, I'm really not. So how have you guys run into that yet with Facebook? And like, I know even posting to your personal page, like posting to your business page is, a little bit easier, but your personal page, it's getting a little more difficult. Are you guys running into that yet?
Yeah, well, I mean, so Facebook did take away access from tools to post to personal profiles at all, maybe about a year or a year and a half ago. Again, another, like, that one didn't make such a big impact on us, but that's another, like, some people are like, well, that's what I used your tool for, like, post it to my personal profile. So, yeah, I think as small businesses, the way I look at it is like, these are marketing channels that we sometimes get to use for free. And I think what we all have to expect is that we are going to be able to get less and less reach for free as the years go on. And that's just how it is. And at some point, it might be like email marketing, where you just always have to pay for that reach, right? People just know that that's how email marketing is. If you want to send out an email to 5,000 people, you have to pay a tool to do it. The social networks may at one point be exactly like that, where when you post on Instagram, you get to choose how much you pay. Do you want to show it to 5 people or 500 people? And however much you pay will be the number of people who see it. So that's like, probably sounds negative, but I do think that's what's coming. I mean, the positive side is it's kind of like, take what you can get when you can get it. And a lot of us really take for granted that we do have these platforms where we just completely for free get to post this really cool marketing content and just have all the people who want to see it for free. Like Instagram stories are really big right now, have a really high view rate, right? That's cool. That's cool that Instagram just gives us this platform and they're like, yeah, if people opt in and they want to see it, like you create the content and we'll show it to them. That's a really unique thing. So I think, I certainly don't take for granted any kind of permissions that we have from the social networks, right? Like, they're private businesses and they get to do what they want. So I think as entrepreneurs, we can just think, you know what, I'm going to ride this wave while it's here. In 2020, we still get a lot of free access to talk to our audiences through social media. We want to make sure, that's also why you want to make sure that you are not just in one channel. You need your own email list, you need your website. You might be doing a text-based marketing. You might be doing Facebook Messenger, on Instagram, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, right? Whatever it is, you don't need to be on all the platforms, but you also don't want to be on just one platform, because I have seen so many times over the years, someone's just like, well, they shut down my LinkedIn page. Like, I don't know why. There's no one I can talk to. Sometimes that just happens.
It happens more than we like to admit too,
yes,
right?
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately. So you run totally virtual, right? All of your employees are virtual?
Yes.
Cool. How did you set that up, and what systems run in the background so that you guys all stay accountable?
Yeah, so we've always been remote. I have moved around a lot. So really, just for me, I really never considered having an in-person business because I wasn't committed to living anywhere. So I'm not going to build a business in a city that I'm not going to be in a year. So it wasn't really it's not like I was like in person or remote, which is better. It just sort of turned out that way. We work completely remotely, which I think is a lot easier than sort of being half and half. I think the most challenging situation is where you have some team in person and some people remote, because it's really hard not to leave out or deprioritize the remote people. So, I mean, it's funny, like I'm sort of like a fish in water. I've always worked remotely. So sometimes it's even hard to answer this question, because I'm like, I don't know, we just do our work and we're on the internet. But, something that we do at Meet Edgar that's a little bit different is our team is all in the US, except for me, actually. I moved to the UK about 2 years ago, but I'm also not really in the day-to-day of Meet Edgar anymore. So being all in the same time zones allows us to really work synchronously, like with that 4-hour time zone spread. So a lot of remote companies, some of the more famous ones are like Buffer or WordPress. they like to do things completely asynchronously. So they're like, we don't have we don't have live meetings. We write everything up and people leave comments later. That's not really how we work at Edgar. So we feel remote, but we also feel like we're all working together. We keep normal work hours because also some remote companies are like, work whenever you want in the middle of the night or 2 hours here, 2 hours there. We're like, everyone say what your work hours are. We expect you to be online during those hours. So we're kind of a more traditional remote company maybe.
Right. So what software are you guys using to keep track of tasks? Did you build your own or are you using like Asana or Basecamp or something like that?
So we use a few different things. So Slack is definitely our main communication channel. We're always changing too. So we have been using Asana. Now we've been using Notion for more things. We recently switched to Notion for our wiki, but now that our wiki's on there, we've been doing more like task stuff there too.
Sorry, you lost me. Your wiki. What is, help me understand that.
Yes, thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, so a wiki is like basically a handbook. Oh, also, if you Google Meet Edgar Company Handbook, we do have most of our company handbook public, which I feel like for whatever reason, I'm doing a terrible job answering your questions about being a remote company. It's much more detailed there. So we do have a resource that tells you all about how we're a remote company. So yeah, a wiki is basically your internal documentation for your company. So Command Central telling you like, just basic things like what is everyone's phone number and their address and where do they live and like what tool do we do our email marketing on? And if you want to send an email to our prospects but not our customers, like what filters do you need to use?
It's more than standard operating procedures.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's just like Command Central for like anything, when someone comes into the business and they're like, how do we do this? Or like, what if someone wants a prorated refund? Do we do that or do we not do that? Just like any questions that people have should and usually do live in the wiki of just like how we do everything across the company.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I actually just read Anything You Want by Derek Sivers.
Love it.
Love Derek. He's an awesome guy, but he kind of pioneered, well, I don't know if he pioneered it, but he basically did the same thing. He made like this huge manual and he's like, okay, this is how we answer this question. This is the reason why we answer this question. And, okay, go forth. And I never want to answer that question again.
Yeah.
So.
And, it's interesting that you brought up standard operating procedures because there's actually not too much of that in there. I mean, depends on how you define all these words, right? Like when I think of what people often call an SOP, standard operating procedure, it's often really detailed. It's like click over here and then like click this template where with our business, because everyone on our team, everyone on our team is full-time, is like an expert in their area. So we don't really tend to need that level of detail. Like, if you're on the customer service team, you're working in intercom, like, okay, maybe you have a few days of training in the beginning about intercom and how it works. But after that, like, you don't really need to refer to a list of exactly what to do. It's more conceptual stuff because those are sort of the decisions you need to make. Like, yeah, it's like, are refunds case by case or never or always? So yeah, it's more kind of the policies and philosophies and how we do things versus like, here's the exact step-by-step.
Which is awesome because that's, I would imagine, probably allowed you to remove yourself from the business, right? Because
definitely.
You basically dumped your brain into that. And so people now understand your vision and why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah. And, not just my brain, right? A lot of areas of the company have been decided by other people. Well, like customer service is a great example of that because that's something I've been uninvolved in from very early because it's not my skill. It's not it's not an area where I have a huge preference. I'm like, give people good service, the details, whatever.
Just go make it happen. Have fun.
Make it good.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Let me know when you figure it out.
Right. So the person who's head of our customer service, Christina Quinones, has been with the company since day one. So that's kind of like her brain downloaded. How does she think we should do customer service? She's making all the decisions there. And then, when someone new comes in, they can just see how we do things.
So if you had to start this journey all over again, so it's 6 years ago, what's the one thing that you maybe would have done sooner? And what's the one book that you wish you had?
Oh, what good questions. Okay. Okay, so the book, I have a clear answer for that one. The book is The Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham. Have you read that one?
I haven't, but it sounds like one I'm going to add to my collection.
It's got a great title, right? Yeah.
Right? The Road Less Stupid. I love that.
Yes. So, yeah, Keith Cunningham is someone who I didn't discover until a few years into my journey. And then I discovered that he holds workshops in Austin where I used to live, but I didn't know about them where I live there. It's just the most annoying thing ever. But yeah, his book, The Road Less Stupid, is amazing. First of all, the best thing about the book is he gives you really juicy details of all his business fails, which are just so fun to read.
Yeah, I tried to pull that out of you. It didn't work.
No, I gave you a fail.
It's true.
So that's great. And then the book is about what he calls thinking time, kind of, an obvious one what that is. But the cool part is he gives you really detailed questions. He has different sections of things to think about, and then he gives you a bunch of prompts that you can use your thinking time to answer for your business. So absolutely love that one, really invaluable. And then what would I have done sooner? Man, that's a really tough one. I mean, when I see some of the things that I've done versus what other businesses do, I think it's just constantly a process of thinking bigger. And then I think over the years, you allow yourself to think bigger and bigger. And that just applies in so many ways. I mean, a lot of it is the goals that you have for your business or different initiatives that you're doing, right? If you're doing some sort of like, okay, I'm going to have this free challenge, and thinking about, okay, how could I get 50 people on the challenge? And then you're like, okay, what if I wanted 500 people on the challenge? What if I wanted 5,000 people on the challenge? And, that's not to say that you have to try to get 5,000 right off the bat, but it's great to think about, because sometimes you can do the same sort of action. Actually, I'm going to say it's always not harder to get the 5,000 people above the 500. Sometimes it's more expensive, and sometimes, and sometimes you need to do different things. But I kind of like to remind myself, all my work is just me like sitting on my butt typing anyway. And it's sort of funny that sometimes we get scared or intimidated, like, oh, who am I to do the things to get the 5,000 people? I'm like, I'm just going to be sitting here typing anyway. So maybe I should try to think about if I can type something different on a different website and get, a different result.
Right. That's so key, because a lot of times, it's just how do you launch that piece of content, whether it goes to 500 or 5,000, right? So it's all in your strategy. This has been awesome. I want to be very, very respectful of your time, and thank you for giving us the last 42 minutes of your life away from your children and the craziness that is this time. So any last things that you would like to add before we sign off for the day?
Yeah, I mean, I think, another thing when you're thinking about growing your business, I am unsurprisingly such a huge believer in automation. And I think a lot of people feel a little bit uncomfortable with it in the beginning. Like you mentioned that you call it cheating. I actually love to think about, I find the word cheating is really helpful for my thinking time. Like we talked about earlier, I'll literally ask myself, if I could cheat, what would I do? Because we often have ideas of stuff that I find that question often prompts something that I've told myself I'm not allowed to do. Like sometimes for an Edgar promotion, we're like, okay, well, if we wanted to get 1,000 new people, what if we could cheat? We're like, well, if we could cheat, we would just give it for free to 1,000 people. And then we're like, oh, well, we could just do that then. If we're trying to get 1,000 new people to try it out, we could just give it to them for free and we could talk about it here, right? Or maybe we could get this partner. So yeah, I think that would be sort of my parting words, whether it's through automation or whether it's just through thinking about an idea differently, how could you, quote unquote, cheat to get the outcome that you want?
So I got to ask, is that how Eddie came to be? Which I have pronounced baby Edgar. I have made Eddie baby Edgar.
You can also call Eddie. He's cool with that. If you can call him
Eddie's
baby
cool
Edgar.
with it.
Yeah. So, I mean, Yes, because the Eddie story. So Eddie is our, at the time of this recording, he's $19 a month. That's an experiment. So he might be more by the time you hear this. Don't complain to me if we've raised his price.
Exactly. It is April 29th of 2020, everybody. And this podcast isn't going to be dropped until August. So
yeah, so we don't know. We don't know what's happening. Don't know. But yeah, Eddie, so what happened with Eddie is we're like, okay, the main reason people tell us that they don't buy is that it's too expensive. So our main price point is $49 a month. And we've always heard over the years, like too expensive, too expensive, too expensive. And in the past, we haven't had a cheaper plan because we're like, we do the math, we do our projections. We're like, we don't know if it, if the increase in conversion rate is going to be worth it. Are we really, because you have to get $19 customers for one $49 customer.
Right.
So we've just never pulled the trigger on it. And finally, we're like, you know what? We just have to try. Like, people are so clearly asking for this. And it was scary for us to price it at 19 too, because we wanted to we're like, we'll do 29. But then we're like, you know what? What people are really looking for is they're looking for that 20 and under. When they want a lower price point, like even the 29 kind of feels like the next tier to a lot of people who are starting out. Like they want 10, 15, 19, 20. So we're like, we have to do 19 and we'll just do it as a test. So that's what we've decided to do. We're like, you know what? We're not committing to it forever, but we'll never know if a $19 plan would work out for us. We can do the math all day long, but there's just no way to know until you do it. So yeah, I think it's a great example of like, okay, people are telling us they're not buying because it's too expensive. What can we do? Oh, well, we could give them a lower price point. Maybe that would solve that problem. And yeah, I mean, we're still collecting data. This stuff takes a long time, like seeing if people upgrade from the Eddie plan. Well, they don't do it in the first week, right? You really need to collect data for like a year to see how people are going to behave. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah. Awesome. Love it. Laura, thank you so much for spending the last 45 minutes with us. And
yes.
If people want to reach out, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah. So when I forgot to say our coupon code, you can enter the coupon code podcast in all caps, PODCAST. You know how to spell podcast. PODCAST.
You got it. All right.
And that'll get you a month free in Edgar, probably, or Eddie. I think it works on Eddie. Email us if it doesn't work and we'll make it work. So use the coupon code podcast and you can get a month free to try out Edgar. And you can find me, Meet Edgar is the company, meetedgar.com, Meet Edgar on social media. And then you can find me on Twitter at LKR.
Awesome. All right. So again, thanks for your time. And everybody, I hope this was insanely valuable. Drop us some comments and let me know what you thought of this. And we will see you guys in the next episode. Thank you for tuning in to the Automate to Dominate podcast at www.awesomeoutsourcing.com/podcast. My name is Michelle Thompson.